dates for this season begin with practice on August 5th. Our first contest will be August 21st. Sectional play begins October 21st on a Monday and are carried through the Saturday, October 26th. Our regional competition this year has AAA competing first on Tuesday, October 29th, and our AA competition will be on Thursday, October 31st. The state tournament this year will again be in Beckley, and the tournament begins on Thursday with our semifinals Thursday, November 7th, and the finals for the state championship will be on Saturday, November 9th. Middle school dates for this year: practice begins August 12th, our first contest November 2nd, and our season for middle school athletes will end on November 2nd. Coaches and officials have required reading. The required reading is located on our site, wvssac.org. Within that site, we have the Interscholastic and the Rules and Regulations Handbook. Once the soccer page is accessed, you'll see various information that is important for all coaches and officials to have at their disposal. We have the sanctioned in upcoming events on our site, as well as the brackets for our state tournament. Various programs involve state tournament schedule, the state tournament information for both AAA and AAA, and we have our hotel listings. We have resources for any school that will be hosting a sectional tournament or a regional tournament. We have all of our state soccer information as well on our site. Please be aware that this is where we will locate the coaches packet, as well as physical forms and concussion reports. Rule updates for this season are minimal. Reminders include the age of a middle school athlete cannot be 15 before July 1st, and the age of a high school student, they must not be 19 before July 1st. Middle school athletes have 6 consecutive semesters beginning the 6th grade year. High school students have 8 consecutive semesters. Our international students may only play at the JV level. Listed are the 10 legal duties for coaches. Coaches are required to properly plan their activities, all practices and gatherings of the students. Expectations to provide proper instruction are in place, as well as warning the athletes and parents of the inherent risk involved with your sport. We must provide a safe physical environment, making sure that practice facilities, game facilities, locker rooms are all safe. We are required to provide adequate and proper equipment. Also, we must match our athletes appropriately and evaluate them for injury or incapacity. Supervision of all practices and contests before and after the activity are required. We are expected to provide appropriate emergency assistance, as well as protecting the athletes against physical and psychological harm. Coaches may comment on a crew of officials or an individual official. These are to be positive comments or negative concerns. The reason for this is intended to be constructive, to help assist and improve our officials. Coaches may appeal a disqualification for a player. Information must come from an administrator of the school in which you coach for. An appeal form is located at our site, and video evidence must accompany this appeal. Please send this information to me, Dan Comer, at wvssac.org, and to our Executive Director, Mr. David Price. Out-of-season coaching flex days must have a principal approval. Our current cycle began June 1st and will end next May 31st. Flex days cannot be used during the first week of another sports season, so we can't use them during the first week of a winter sport tryouts or spring sport tryouts. Use of any part of the day will count as a flex day. Flex days can only be used on a Sunday with SSAC approval. Flex days cannot be used during part of a tryout. 8th grades are prohibited from attending flex days. Flex days must be voluntary for all athletes, and you cannot accumulate flex days from one year to the next. If you don't use them, you lose them. Although rare, altercations and fights do occur. We must have a plan in place beforehand to diffuse the situation effectively. The following is the protocol for such an event. Please have a coach from your team go to the altercation to break up the two individuals. Instruct your players on the field to go towards the bench, and instruct your players on the bench to remain. Have a coach stay back and keep players from coming onto the field. Additionally, instruct your video crew to continue to record during this event. This will then be used as evidence presented to us to determine infractions for all involved. Be sure to know where your security is stationed. Keep all non-essential people off the sideline and preferably behind a bench or barrier. Our ejection policy requires a 2-game suspension for a first-time offense and a 4-game suspension for a second-time offense. Anyone suspended from the contest are to be out of sight and sound of contest during the suspension period. They may not attend, be in sight or sound. In the event that an assault occurs with an official or a coach, a police report must be filed with a law enforcement officer in the county in which the assault occurred. The report must be filed in magistrate court in the county in which the assault occurred. All certified authorized coaches must be board approved. The certification is required to be renewed each year. All certificates expire on June 30th. Must complete Form 39. Coaches and administrators must work together to complete all eligibility certificates prior to the first contest. Physical forms are located at the SSAC site. They must be dated and signed after May 1st, 2024. We must check for updated forms that includes a sudden cardiac arrest, concussion, and heat acclimatization information. This is the copy of page 1 of our standardized physical form located on our SSAC site. At the top, we have the demographic information for the student athlete. The second part of this first page includes individual eligibility rules, and the bottom third includes a parental consent form. This first page must be dated and signed by the student athlete and the parent. Here is page 2 of the standardized form. At the top of the form is the medical history of the student athlete to be signed off on by the parent. And the bottom section of this page is the physical that must be signed by a healthcare professional. All documentation required by the SSAC must be communicated between coaches and administrators at their school. Please establish good protocol and rapport with your athletic administrator and or principal in order to provide concise information. All red card ejection rules will apply this year, and the official ball for this season again is the Wilson Vedito. This ball is required only for sectional, regional, and state play. Number of contests for a high school regular season is 20 games, middle school's 14. The breakdown of this includes for the high school, an athlete may play in 50 halves, excluding sectional, regional, and state play. The high school athlete may not compete in more than 3 halves in one day. For our middle schools, athletes are allowed 28 total halves per season. And players are reminded that a second yellow card in a contest will result in disqualification from that contest. The team will not be allowed to substitute. The mercy rule in West Virginia for soccer is a 10-point differential at halftime, and if that occurs, the contest is over. If during the second half the lead reaches a 10-goal differential, the contest at that point is over. Again, our point of emphasis this year is sportsmanship. It is the expectation from this office that the adults involved in the extracurricular activities for our schools be the example for our students. Please provide them with the information needed in order to carry out this task. To further illustrate sportsmanship for all WVSSAC contests, a handshake line protocol has been introduced this year. Please follow the guidelines set forth in this protocol, as we feel a clean and respectful handshake line is necessary at the conclusion of a contest. First and foremost, administrators and security from both schools should be stationed on the field in close proximity to the handshake line. One team should be on the right and the other on the left. Players from one team should not be allowed to walk down both sides of the line. Absolutely no non-essential personnel should be allowed on the field until after both teams have reached a designated area after completion of the handshake. A coach or administrator should be stationed at the end of the handshake line to direct athletes who have completed the line to a designated area on their end of the field. Do not allow them to continue to the opposing sideline or to the other end of the field. Officials' tests are online at our site. The Part 1 exam has closed. Part 2 is currently open and will close August 26th. Please communicate all questions to Mr. Rex Foster in our office. Officials, all information referencing registration and assignments from our office are on our Arbiter link. This is located at our site. Officials, continue to do the great job that you do inspecting our venues prior to competition. Officials patches are $3 and can be received from our office with an email either to me or to Mr. Rex Foster. Our self-nomination forms have been extended through September 11th. Game reports are due no later than December 15th. Officials, when completing a special report, please access our website, use your admin login, go to the officials management page, click enter special report, and most notably, please verify the level of the competition that you have the special report for before you click enter. Currently, West Virginia regular season does not have an overtime period. Tournament play, however, has the following. Keep in mind that we can use this tournament overtime for conference or league championships, and they are as follows. At the conclusion of a contest that is tied, a 10-minute sudden victory period can be used. If after the first period the game remains tied, there's a 2-minute break between, and then we add a second sudden victory period for 10 minutes. If at the end of the second 10-minute sudden victory period, then kicks from the mark will be carried out until a winner is determined. For regular season contest, a tie game is a tie. All coaches are reminded that they must complete training each year prior to the beginning of their season. Concussion in sport and sudden cardiac arrest are mandated trainings to be completed each year. Heat illness prevention is a course that is completed for all first-year coaches. All courses are free and can be accessed from our site through the NFHS Learn link. This slide illustrates our emergency action plan. Coaches must complete the emergency action plan before the first practice of the year. Each year, your emergency action plan must be edited to include individuals new to the team that will be assisting with the emergency action plan. These should be in our office at this time. If they are not, please get them to us as soon as possible. Keep in mind also that the emergency action plan must be practiced by the team. So when we have this plan, we carry through with working the plan with our student athletes. Initially, at the beginning of the year, several different opportunities should be taken to practice the plan. Student athletes are reminded that they are part of the emergency action plan and will take this role very seriously. Also, as mandated, this emergency action plan must be posted. Please keep in mind to redact any personal information from this form involving student athletes. Prior to the start of every contest, home team head coaches are responsible for providing a medical timeout. This medical timeout allows for the head coach to share information referencing the emergency action plan in place at their school. They must identify the location of an AED, the availability of emergency personnel, and where administrative assistance is located. Please share this with the opposing coach and officials. Officials are reminded that if the head coach of the home team fails to provide this information, please remind them to share this information. Additional information is included in our sports medicine packet. School administrators and coaches are responsible for providing information to all parents. Schools must hold an informational meeting for student athletes and parents prior to the beginning of the season regarding the warning signs of sudden cardiac arrest in children. Information referencing sudden cardiac arrest is available on our site Also, schools must submit online within 7 days a concussion report. This concussion report is mandated to be sent whether a concussion is diagnosed or not. This slide illustrates the sudden cardiac arrest awareness form available on our site. Please share this with parents at your informational meeting. This slide illustrates an example of an AED. AEDs are required at all practices and contests. Coaches are required to be trained in AED CPR. This slide illustrates a concussion return to play protocol. Athletes removed from a contest that shows signs and symptoms of a concussion shall be immediately evaluated by an appropriate healthcare professional. If no appropriate healthcare professional with training and evaluation of head injuries is available, the athlete shall not be allowed to return to play. This slide illustrates our return to play protocol. Keep in mind that student athletes must be asymptomatic prior to beginning the steps in our protocol. Typically, student athletes will be symptomatic, having signs and symptoms for several days post-injury. If during any point of the protocol the symptoms reappear, the student must then stop with the protocol and may not begin again until they are again asymptomatic. Each step takes 24 hours. So we do one step. Once it's complete, we've had success. We wait 24 hours until we go to the next step. Identified on this slide are the healthcare providers who can evaluate and release the student to return to play. A medical doctor, a doctor of osteopathy, a doctor of chiropractic, advanced registered nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, a licensed registered certified athletic trainer, or a licensed physical therapist. No contest has ever been more important than the health of a student athlete. So when in doubt, sit them out. The heat illness policy is illustrated in this slide. This policy applies to all practices and conditioning activities, in season, out of season, and over the summer, in which heat illness poses a risk. Keep in mind that heat illness can manifest both indoor and outdoor. The prevention of heat illness is knowing the condition of our athletes. Coaches will be notified of any student athlete with pre-existing conditions that place the individual at higher risk of exertional heat illness. Coaches are responsible for having a plan in place as to how they are going to monitor heat conditions. Beginning of each practice conditioning session and continue every 30 minutes during the activity, we will use a wet bulb globe thermometer reading. The monitoring will be recorded either in a hard copy or stored in the device. Modifications will be made as follows. Monitoring of the student athlete's safety will be continuous during any physical activity. School staff should be educated on the signs and symptoms of exertional heat illness. The signs and symptoms include, but are not limited to, a headache, confusion or out of it look, disorientation or dizziness, altered consciousness or coma, nausea or vomiting, diarrhea, hot and moist or dry skin, a rectal temperature greater than 104 Fahrenheit at the time of the incident indicates exertional heat stroke. Additional information for our policy includes: if a student athlete is suspected of having an exertional heat stroke, EMS must be called immediately. However, anyone with exertional heat stroke must be cooled first and then transported by EMS. Please provide a cooling zone designated at each practice site. Treatment must include removing of excess clothing, placing the patient in a cold water immersion tub between 35 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit, or with ice floating at the top of the tub, if no thermometer is available to check the water temperature. Once diagnosed with exertional heat illness, the student athlete must complete a rest period and/or obtain medical clearance from a physician before returning to play, depending on the type of illness diagnosed. Identified in this slide is our relative humidity chart. This is the reading that you would get from your wet bulb globe thermometer. A reading of 82 or lower is a green reading with normal activity. Provide at least 3 separate rest breaks each hour with a minimum duration of 3 minutes each during the workout. As identified, once that temperature starts to rise, once the relative humidity starts to increase, we begin to incorporate more restrictions on our practice, all the way through until you reach the black reading, where we have a reading of 92 or higher. If at 92 or higher, we will suspend all practices outdoors and delay until there's a cooler wet bulb globe reading. This is our lightning and thunder disturbance slide from our National Federation. We are still following a 30-minute no activity time frame after each flash or sound of thunder. Proper collaboration between coaches, officials, and administrators should occur as to the total time allowed for the game to be completed. Things such as weekday contests versus weekend contests. Distance traveled from the opposing team. These things are all taken into consideration as to whether to suspend or end the contest. This slide is an example of the form we have on our site referencing the dangers of opioids and how opioids can lead to an addiction. Please share this information with parents at your pre-season meeting. Identified on this slide is State Board of Education Policy 4373, which restricts and prohibits the use of tobacco on school property or any facility hosting a school event. This concludes my portion of the soccer
access to
clinic
available publications for sale. View publications assigned to you, download books for offline viewing, read publications as an ebook,
positive influence
and
that you have
they're
on the lives
available
of our young
on
people.
App Store and Google Play.
Please feel free to contact me with any questions that you may have. Now I'm going to introduce Mr. Dennis Brumfield for his portion of this presentation.
Welcome to the 2024-25 West Virginia Soccer Rules PowerPoint. I would like to begin with NFHS All Access website. I want you to be aware of this. It's at the NFHS site. It's allaccess.nfhs.org. It includes rules publications, High School Today magazine, policy debate quarterlies, and other NFHS digital publications. Additionally, on All Access, you can view available publications for sale, view publications assigned to you, download books for offline viewing, read publications as an ebook. They're available on App Store and Google Play, so you can have the rules on your phone. There are no major rules changes this year, only small rules changes. The first rule change is that if tape or a similar material, stays and straps, is applied externally to the socks above the ankle, it shall be a similar color as that part of the sock to which it is applied. Blue to blue, red to red. We're not worried about the shade. Below the ankle, tape or similar material may be any color. So we're not worried about below the ankle. Now, we're talking about the new stuff where they cut off the tops of the game socks, and then they put a pair of more comfortable socks or more safety type socks below the ankle. So anything below the ankle you don't have to worry about. Now we're going to talk about fouls and misconduct, Rule 12. The rule on fouls and misconduct has been revised to eliminate duplicate language and improve usability. Sections have been rearranged to enhance ease of reference. Red card offenses have been ordered by relative level of severity. And that's, some states are giving different punishment for different red cards. We haven't changed. We only have one red card that isn't given the full punishment. We'll go over that later. This is another part of fouls and misconduct, Rule 12. Direct and indirect free kick fouls have their own sections now in the rules. Before, I always thought direct free kicks were all touching fouls, like handling the ball, pulling, kicking, tripping, things of that nature. Now we have one that isn't a touching foul. If a coach or a bench player interferes with play on the field, that is a direct free kick. Rule 12 has also had two terminology changes. The term obstruction has been replaced by the term impeding, and the term disqualification has been replaced by the term ejection. Fouls and misconduct, Rule 12, have two terminology changes. One is obstruction has been replaced by the term impeding. The second is disqualification has been replaced by the term ejection. Fouls and misconduct, Rule 12, now includes the criteria for stopping a promising attack in Section 8. This is what we call tactical fouls, and we're going to go into more detail later. Fouls and misconduct, Rule 12, also includes Article 4 in Rule 12, Section 8. Provides guidance that all elements must be satisfied for obvious goal-scoring opportunities. The distance between the offense and the goal, general direction of play, the likelihood of keeping control of the ball, location, and number of defenders. Also, we remember this as the 4 Ds. Distance between the offense and the goal, direction of play, distance from the ball, and location and number of defenders. You have to remember this. All of those have to be present, because this is a red card. We are now going over editorial changes. Time in and time out. The clock shall be stopped when a substitute by a team in the lead is beckoned onto the field in the final 5 minutes of regulation or overtime. We don't have to worry about overtime, because overtime has to be a tie game in tournament play, and if there's a score, it's a golden goal, so we don't need to worry about the overtime. And the last 5 minutes of regulation, there's only one exception. We're going to go into that later, but in the final 5 minutes, the team in the lead, if they substitute, you have to stop the clock. Timer's duties. The official timer shall start or stop the timing device as per 7.4 when signaled to do so by the referee. This change removes a duplicate reference to timer's duties. Stopping the time, we raise our arms over our head in an X. That tells the timer to stop the clock. Please be aware of that. This should be a no-brainer. This is misconduct 12.5.1F or 15 and 5.1.2. Amended language related to prohibition of players, coaches, bench personnel, or officials related to the use of alcohol, tobacco, or controlled or illicit substances for non-medical purposes, beginning with arrival at the competition site until departure following the completion of the contest. No tobacco, no alcohol, no vaping, none of that stuff. We have a rule at the state tournament that you can't have any alcohol 24 hours before the contest. And obviously that was created because we had a problem. Points of emphasis. Officials' toolbox for game management. Referees have a variety of skills, techniques, and strategies within their toolbox to effectively officiate a match and maintain control over players, coaches, and the game environment. Some of the tools include communication, using verbal and nonverbal cues to convey decision instructions, warnings, and working with the game site administration to facilitate a positive game environment. Coaches, if you tell us not to talk to your players, we only have the two Barney Fife bullets, the red and yellow cards. So don't tell us not to talk to players because we have to. Secondly, even if coaches are yelling at you, just show that you're hearing them and move on. You don't have to agree with them, okay? Also, work with the game administration if you're having problems with fans or things of that nature. Secondly, game control, using authority to manage the tempo and flow of the game, intervening to calm tensions, prevent conflicts, and address unsporting behavior. That's talking again, but using it for game control. Plus using your whistle and your cards and those type of things. Additionally, in our toolbox, we can use development. With the explanation of misconduct, both coaches and officials should approach interaction with respect and maintain professionalism. We should maintain professionalism all the time. We should respect each other. We don't want the student athletes being the adults on the field. We need to have respect for each other and talk in a calm manner and get things taken care of. If we let it get out of control, what do you think the students are going to do? Secondly, or actually fourthly, adaptability. Referees must adapt to changing circumstances and adjust their officiating style based on the level of play, the behavior of players, and unexpected developments during the match. In other words, we might have to tighten the match up, or we might have to talk a little bit more. We may have to call a little bit closer. We just have to read the game and understand that. As I mentioned before, we're going to talk about stopping a promising attack. The strategy of tactically fouling with the aim to interrupt the attacking team's progress without necessarily denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity is a form of misconduct, and it's always been. Look, here it's reading the game. You have young guys that are there. You need to help them learn how to read the game so they can catch these stopping promising attack events. Rule 12 highlights the importance of discerning the nature of these types of tactical offenses for consistent and fair officiating. Fouls that stop a promising attack might not be severe in nature, but the offense's impact on the attacking team's potential needs to be recognized and dealt with accordingly. Giving you one example, there may be a clearing kick coming out of the back that a player reaches up and hits the ball with their hand. That's a tactical foul. They're trying to stop the attack. That can be from the back. Officials need to understand the nuanced dynamics of the play, which is reading the game, maintain a tactical awareness of the phase of play, and recognize SPA incidents. Referees are tasked with evaluating multiple factors to determine the promise of an attack, encompassing elements like player positioning, ball control, defensive presence, team space. Okay? Any foul disrupting a promising attack is considered misconduct, warranting a caution and a yellow card for the offending player. We're going to talk about one of the exceptions in a minute. If SPA occurs within the offender's penalty area and the foul is an attempt to play the ball, the player is not cautioned if the referee awards a penalty kick. And the same thing on OXGO. If the player is trying to play the ball but fouls the player, then if a penalty kick is given, it's only a yellow card. In other SPA circumstances inside the penalty area, for example, holding, pulling, pushing, no possibility to play the ball, etc., the offending player must be cautioned. We must be vigilant after a goal is scored. Officials must stay alert. In addition to administrative tasks, the official must be vigilant for any signs of tension or potential misconduct and address issues promptly to prevent situations from escalating. We have a lot of taunting right after a goal. We have a lot of excess celebration. So we need to be careful. We want kids to celebrate a goal or players to celebrate a goal in soccer, but we need to work as a team to determine if the goal was in fact scored properly. That means before the center ref blows the whistle and points to the center, he should look at his AR and see if his AR is standing there or running up the field. If he's standing there, there's a problem, so you need to take care of it. Also, you need to identify and address any unsporting actions or misconducts. Taunting is a red card offense. The officiating crew must monitor players for excessive or inappropriate behavior such as taunting or potential confrontations, dissent, or other provocative actions. After a goal, officials should focus on the players, recognize situations that could lead to conflicts, be present and proactive in their responses, and deal with misconduct appropriately. The crew should cover record keeping and beckoning in substitutes in their pre-game discussions. One of the things that you want to make sure is that you have 2 sets of eyes on the field if you have a 3-man system at all times. So you go over who's going to record first, second, and third. And when you beckon in a substitute, remember that when you're beckoning in a substitute, when you beckon that player in, they become the player. The person coming off the field becomes the substitute, which has a lot to do with if you play short or not. So remember that. West Virginia rules on suspended games. All games in the regular season, including ties, unless in tournament play, are complete games if the game is suspended at halftime. Games that are suspended before halftime and subsequently played will start at the point of suspension. So that means you have to record what time you suspended the game. All the red cards and yellow cards, you have to make someone aware of what happened before the game was suspended. Wait a reasonable amount of time before suspending. A reasonable amount of time takes into consideration the day of the game. If it's a Saturday, we may take in more time. The time of the game, if it's late in the evening, we have student athletes and they have to get their rest and they have to do their homework. Also, you need to take into consideration, especially first of the year, distance traveled, because we got people from the eastern part of the state playing the west, or western part playing the east, or northern playing in the south, and south playing in the north. Now, if they've traveled a long ways, we want to give them every opportunity to get the game in, because there's a lot of expense involved. The second yellow card in a game to a player will be a red card. The participant receiving the card will have to sit out the rest of the game. The team of the offending player will have to play short. No other set out is required for a second yellow card for a player. Once again, I want to repeat that because I get calls about this every year. If you get a second yellow card and you're a player, okay, you're on the field playing, there's no other set out required. Coaches and bench personnel receiving a second yellow card are subject to the regular ejection policy set out of additional games. Overtime procedure. 5-minute period between regular game and overtime, then a coin flip, then a 10-minute sudden victory period. If still tied, 2 minutes between the overtime periods. Second 10-minute sudden victory period. If still tied, give everyone time to get organized, about 5 minutes. If still tied, kicks from the marks until a winner determined. Follow procedure on page 91 of the rule book. Goal differential. If after the first half there's a 6-goal differential, let the clock run. The half referee will make a decision on long stoppages and must consider time left, score, other circumstances. Clock will revert to regular timing if the goal differential falls below 6 goals. The clock will run the last 5 minutes of the second period if there's a 6-goal differential. There's one case where it doesn't, so we'll go over that in a minute. If a team is leading by 10 goals at halftime, the game is over. If a team gets a 10-goal lead in the second half, the game is over. Ethical responsibilities. On page 8 is the coach's code of ethics. On page 9 is the official's code of ethics. Officials, do not take games if you have conflicts, regardless of who assigns you. Relatives playing in game, your previous coach, etc. Do not take a game after taking another game at a lower level without working it out with your assigners. Most assigners are reasonable and will try to get a replacement on the lower game if this is your dream game or you really want to do a game for advancement. Try not to overbook teams. Familiarity breeds contempt. 3 games boys, 3 games girls is as much as I do. The NFHS Learning Center. The Learning Center has 63 courses and 90 courses altogether, 90 plus, for coaches, students, administrators, parents, officials, and performing arts. There's over 21 million courses that have been delivered. The first 3 here, concussion and sports, heat illness, and sudden cardiac arrest, the coaches have to take. Officials, you should take it so you'll know the signs and symptoms. NFHS Network. The NFHS Network is a great site to watch out-of-state games or even watch your games. My grandson is a quarterback in Oklahoma, and I've got to watch him the last 4 years. The NFHS Authentication Mark Update. Here are the 2 marks that are allowed. Here are the 2 marks illustrated on soccer balls. Thank you and have a good season.